And we are back on light years. And I got a special guest, trade deadline week, host of the No Cap Room and Ball Don't Lie on the Ball Don't Lie podcast network, and author of Built to Lose: How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever, which, by the way, you guys should read. Great book. Sometimes I feel like the Warriors are going to just go into tank mode, but that's a different topic. Senior NBA reporter from Yahoo Sports, Jake Fischer. Jake, how you doing?
What's going on, man? I was in Atlanta watching Steph Curry do Steph Curry things and thinking what a shame it would be to take a rebuilding turn. But you never know these days, man. You never know.
I know. I knew you were there for that game, and I'm like, if this doesn't make the Warriors reconsider their non-committal approach to the deadline and wait and see, I don't know what will, because that game was just the perfect manifestation of kind of who the Warriors are, which is Steph is still brilliant. There's a lot of positives, and they leave with the loss.
Well, I'm of the persuasion. I'm of the opinion that if Jonathan Kuminga didn't foul out, that probably is a win for the home team, and the home team being the Bay Area team, not the home team that was actually
Right.
the Atlanta Hawks that night. The home team of this podcast. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, I think, and it's fun. I like talking to guys such as yourself, and by that I mean like the probably most notable fan podcaster of the team, who are very hard on the front office because you really are coming from like the purest place and like the purest perspective of just like wanting the team to win. That's like, or what is best overall for the team's long term goal of
Sure.
winning, which like is what this thing is about at the end of the day, right? But I
Yeah.
think like the lack of information that's coming out, or like the talk about how Golden State is like considering various things, I would not to like seem like I'm carrying water for everyone up top Chase Center, but like I think it's smart for teams to be maybe more hanging back and like evaluating things across the threshold. But I do
Mm.
agree that they should be within the brackets of getting better right now because Steph Curry is still fucking sick.
I mean, I don't need them to be in every one of your, trade notebook articles. You had one come out this morning, which I read, and there was one mention of the Warriors, and there we'll get to that later. None of it matters. Like, what matters is what they actually do with it. If anything, it probably speaks better if they end up making a move and somewhat moving in silence. You could argue that's better.
Right.
Uh, but I wanted to ask you this. It seems to me like this deadline is aiming to be pretty inactive. Like, Toronto made some big moves, but they made them 2 weeks ago and 4 weeks ago, which is kind of atypical. Uh, and just reading your reporting and other notable national reporters reporting, it doesn't seem like this is going to be a crazy trade deadline, maybe the way last year was with guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving moving.
I would agree. Recording this Monday at 3 p.m. Not to pull back the
Yeah.
curtain, but like it's important. It's funny. The only analogy that comes to mind is like when you're at a music festival with friends and
Okay.
the like the phone circuits are jammed. So like I've always been suggested to me in like or if you're at an amusement park, if you're in high school, you timestamp the text message because you never know how long it's going to take to go through the other line because of all the phones.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm doing podcasts now that are like we're recording it at
Yeah.
this time. So as of Monday, February 5th at 3:07 p.m. Uh, yeah, like I do think that the biggest names that are out there are there's probably only a few of them that would really be able to swing the title. And I don't really know if the teams that are really in position to acquire them are really title contenders. Like if the Lakers were to get DeJounte Murray, for example, would you be really, really confident to consider the Lakers Western Conference contenders? Like probably not. No offense to Los Angeles, but that would
Mm-hmm.
certainly bring them up the threshold. But there's a ton of teams in the West who are clearly obvious contenders in Denver, the Clippers, Minnesota, and Oklahoma City in terms of just like this season, what the numbers say, what the eye test says. And everyone
Sure.
else is kind of jockeying for position behind them at this juncture. So I just don't know. Like, does Bruce Brown going to New York in theory, really move the Knicks within like
God.
another hair of Boston, maybe, but I don't seem to. I don't think that there's going to be that type of stuff. And for the longest time doing shows such as this, we'd say, well, you never knew that Kevin Durant, Kyrie, everything were going to happen. Well, Kyrie already got traded this time last year, and it hadn't really been reported yet. But the Kevin Durant to Phoenix rumblings were definitely starting very quietly, like because it happened, I think Tuesday or Monday night last year. Like I remember the Kyrie
Yeah.
trade happened to Dallas, and then the word was like, "But don't worry, Brooklyn is they're sticking with Kevin Durant. Like it's fine." And then very quickly they were, well, are we sure about that? And then everything happened.
Sure.
So right now we're already it's 3 o'clock already. Like
I mean,
3 days away.
I mean, I agree with you in the sense of I would be shocked if a player of the caliber of Kevin Durant was moved this deadline, just because that, I mean, how many guys are there who you could put in that category? 8, and, Luka's not getting traded. Steph's not getting traded. Like, that's like the type of caliber player. What I will say, though, is to your point, DeJounte Murray, does he make the Lakers a contender? Or let's say the Warriors had interest in him, which they apparently don't really. If they acquired him, would he make them a contender? The answer is no, but he would probably get them closer. And that's more the lens I'm looking at it. Because when you watch this Warriors team play, short of them getting a top 5 to 10 player, they're multiple moves away from probably getting themselves back into the mix of being on the level of a Denver, Boston, those type of teams. And that's okay. But that's just more moves you have to make when you go to the offseason is the way I'm looking at. So like maybe you acquire someone at the deadline. Maybe that player moves you higher up into the play-in and make sure you make the playoffs, but that's about it. Still getting you a little closer,
Yeah, and I think that's part of the game. Like it's just about maximizing your odds, even if it's only 3% more. Like the
Sure.
best team's title odds, truly. This is not just like speaking as turn of phrase. Like the cap savviest, most analytic minded front office are like literally calculating their championship odds, right? You see it on ESPN's BPI, whatever,
Sure.
with Hollander stuff. Like the best team's odds at this time of the year is like a quarter. So if you can move it 3%, that's pretty damn good. So yeah. I don't know exactly where that piece is going to be coming specifically for the Warriors team, because you could argue several different areas on the roster that would need improvements.
The beauty of mediocrity is there's a lot of things to address.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, like watching the game next to Slater in Atlanta on Saturday, like he asked about a pregame, and then it just, you notice it because the style of play just dramatically is different. They're clearly valuing this 5-man lineup with Pods in instead of Clay and they're trying it at the end of second quarters to match it against the other team's top 5, and they're trying it post end of game situations too. They've clearly had really good success so far. I don't know the numbers at this moment, but at some point in time, like around the weekend, heading into the weekend, they were like plus 42 in like 100 minutes with Kuminga, Draymond, and Wiggins together. So it seems like they're finding some type of formula with this group. However, like Wiggins' name has been one that's out there, right, on the trade market. So we don't necessarily know if he's going to be around. But I would also, I am, to bring this to a close, I am starting to put him in the camp of like Harrison Barnes, who were in theory like the big salary piece that a team was willing to put out there, that when they did look around the market, they did see what we're saying, that there isn't really anyone out there that's better than that guy right now. So you'd have to, I think the Warriors would have to find like a really good, can we turn this dollar into $1.25 with 2 pieces type move for them to actually part with Wiggins. That's just my read on it right now, because I don't see there being players on the board that they would want to go use him to buy with.
Yeah, it does seem like the last 2 weeks with this lineup having some juice, and it does make sense on paper. Like in preseason, I thought this would be what they would go to. Obviously, Wiggins starting the year awful, and then Draymond whatever the hell that was at the beginning of the season, meant that they couldn't go to it halfway for half of the year. You mentioned in your trade notebook that came out Monday morning, Chris Paul to the Orlando Magic. Chris Paul probably is the most realistic large contract that they may move off of. Would you agree with that at this stage, or you think they're still just kind of looking at getting rid of him because it gets him under the apron? And it's a parachute out of being a cap hell in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I wrote that rumor has been out there, but I have been told it's not accurate. So I want that to be.
Let's
make sure that's straight. Not to, I'm just being accurate here. But I do think a couple things regarding from that. Like, it makes a ton of sense for Golden State to keep him with that salary structure in place with the tax implications that you're referring to. So I think that combined with, I mean, the real on-court benefit to acquiring Chris Paul was to, of course, prop up the minutes when Steph is on the bench. And he was doing a phenomenal job at that before he got hurt. And there's an argument to be made that I have heard that Chris Paul might even have more value to any team or to the Warriors than any other team in the league because of that dual. He fits a specific position and a role for us. Plus, you combine him with that cap, chicanery that they will be able to consider with him. So, yes, is he in theory someone with that deal that would make sense to be an outgoing salary or something to play with? For sure. But I haven't heard his name come up in anything that I've been able to determine is legitimate at this point in time.
Let me ask you a broader Warriors-related question in terms of the front office there. Are they like pretty talkative in general? And is the fact that we're not hearing much pretty much just a reflection on, straight up, we're not that interested? Or is it more that they tend to be hard to read, that has this position where it seems like, they're probably going to do nothing at the deadline? Again, Monday, midday, a lot of time for that to change. But, right now it's trending towards we like what we have more than what's out there.
Well, let's look back to last year's trade deadline where I remember recording something almost, maybe it was on Monday with you, and you were like, talking to me about Wiseman, and I was saying,
sure,
I'm like kind of hearing some stuff, like nothing to report yet. And then, come, 2:47 p.m. Eastern time,
right?
Like, he got dealt. And then I remember like not hearing anything about Poole at all until the draft. And then was it the day of the draft he got dealt for CP? Like, immediately I got text. Jordan Poole. He's getting traded to Washington. And like, it does kind of, sometimes things do just kind of happen. But I'll say in terms of like the Warriors' talkativeness as it relates to what they're doing, I do think the Warriors have just generally, as a front office, from my experience knowing these guys, they're just like chill in terms of, we're not panicking. We're not going to do anything out of like an emotional response. Like, they seem to be very, let's just say, I mean, calculated.
Pragmatic.
What'd you say?
Pragmatic.
Yeah. And I think part of that can come from the fact that you've won 4 titles before and you still have people, like, you don't have, like, we're the Warriors, we blah, blah, blah. Like, that can be viewed as like maybe smug in some vein, but like, I've never felt it that way at all. I think it's just, it is what it is. Let's call it what it is. Kevin Durant talks about himself being in the GOAT conversation and people criticize him, but like, he fucking is. Like, Golden State's won 4 titles. Steph is Steph. I think they've earned the right to think their process has been pretty darn good over the last, decade plus. And I also think there's even starting to be a little bit of added swagger about the fact that Kuminga has seemed to hit. Like, if Jonathan Kuminga continues to be on this trajectory, he's billing into someone who could potentially be a real number 2 one day, not right now.
Sure.
But that would mark a massive success for the 2 timeline plan that has been as litigated as any like labeled era of a team building strategy as anything other than the process. Like I think those are the two things that have been so
Give both
bastardized
give
on NBA Twitter forever.
give both front offices credit for their branding there, because everyone knows what you mean when you say the process or two timelines.
Yeah,
You don't even need to explain it. So
yeah,
maybe Joe Lacob and Sam Hinkie need to teach a course in marketing.
yeah. Because look,
Uh,
like to be fair, there's been a ton of criticism of Steve Kerr's coaching staff for like lack of player development and stuff, right, over the
sure.
years, to the point where they even like changed out a lot of the coaches
Hmm.
to really try to re-emphasize development because Wiseman wasn't taking strides and what have you. And like Kaminga represents an objective, without a doubt, success story as a player development guy, being that the real goal of taking dudes in the lottery is to hope that by the time their rookie extension comes up, there you have like a real idea of who they are and that they're going to be a real difference maker. And like right now, that's clearly where this thing is headed.
Yeah, and then might even throw Brandon Pajemski in there on a
Yeah,
smaller scale. Like I can't think of a
he's awesome.
rookie a rookie that Steve Kerr has trusted just in general, and a lot of that's like, I mean, what number 29 pick during like championship years is going to get the trust, but like he's getting it, and it's deserved because he's a better decision maker than most players on that team. Um, I guess let's wrap it here. One last segment here. I want you to give me a prediction on what you think the Warriors are going to do these final 3 days. I don't need a player. I don't need you to pull up Trade Machine and be like they're trading a protected
Yeah,
second for this. But like, where do you see their head being the last couple of days, and what do you think it leads to?
I do think that Golden State is not like Dallas is shopping for four men, for example.
Mhm.
The Bucks are shopping for perimeter defense. I do think Golden State having various things to look at, and as like I mean, just watching it the other night, it is kind of interesting to think that the Warriors could maybe stand to have some more perimeter shooting, which is just
Yeah,
like not a but like Moses Moody's been hurt, whatever. So I just think that Golden State is going to be very pragmatic, to use your word, about paying price points for certain players. But I think they will be able to slide into certain cracks that maybe other teams back away from because they're really not as. I don't have their whole draft covered on top of my head, but like they're not as strapped as other teams are in their position. Like they don't have 4 first round
yeah.
picks to trade.
to
But
to provide the context there, they're the 2030 pick. I know it's kind of protected, but it's tied to the Wizards until the draft comes, until they can determine whether it converts in a first or a second. And then obviously this pick is tied to Portland now. I believe Portland owns it. So yeah, I mean they have other options, but there is some there.
yeah, so and they've got you know you kind of look on the bench and forget that Gary Payton's part of this team. Like
Sure.
that's a salary that they could go do something with in theory. I'm not reporting that I've even heard that because I haven't, but like they have options, and I think the way the trade deadline works compared to other, the draft and free agency, like there's a column A and a column B, right? There's
Hmm.
positional needs, and then there's teams that are looking to fill them, and like not every line gets drawn. There are people left on the board versus like the draft. There
Hmm.
are 60 spots and someone's going to get taken, and in free agency, aside from a couple of players who end up lingering forever, like some of these guys are going to go somewhere. So
Right.
it's not how the draft, that's not how the trade deadline works. There's people like it's a market. Teams go shopping there. They bring certain players and assets. They're going to do that. Sometimes you go home. I think when a lot of those teams go home, there will be opportunity for Golden State to get something that will help them because of the motivations with Steph and the fact that they do have a lot of optionality to play with.
Sounds to me like nothing's happening until Thursday morning, my time. And maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it feels like just based on everything I'm seeing, this could be a very late moving trade deadline.
I think so too. I think so
Yeah,
too.
that seems like, yeah, okay. I guess buckle up. We'll have some fun over the next couple of days. Jake, really appreciate you hopping on. That's senior
Thank
NBA
you.
reporter with Yahoo Sports, Jake Fischer. Also, make sure to go pick up a copy of author of Built to Lose, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. I would not be telling you guys to read it if I did not believe it. It's great. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man.
Enjoy not sleeping for the next 72 hours and then go
We'll get some
take care of
sleep. It won't
yourself.
be much, but we'll get some sleep. Yeah. Thanks,
All
Doug.
right. Later.